able to do something like increasing that to 2 cells, that we think with that forward thinking and maybe think to put some money there so that when it comes time and when we do need it, that we have it in place. If you're saying that it would be beneficial to have it anyway, I feel like we can prove the need for it even at this point.
I think you're right. It's just how to get those funds though. I mean, right now we're operating on where do we raise rates, and that's
Grant
where the
funds.
funds are coming
Saying
from.
grant
So if we
funds.
can get grant funds, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Any grant funds we can
Yeah.
get to start those projects. We've been talking about wastewater, talk about water over there. We've got one well and one storage tank. And as you start figuring your capacities and where do you have, and do you have enough fire water at what point? You know, we have to have those things added in when you start putting, whether it's apartments or just housing or whatever those are.
Yeah.
So sewer, you're gonna not only have lagoon, you have more lift stations because of how flat that is over there. You're gonna have to bring it to certain points, do some more lift stations to keep raising those levels. So it's a whole, trying to find out what that plan is. Maybe when planning and zoning gets more direction, or Coast Guard comes in and gives more, whoever it is that we get more direction, is what makes what you really need. You know, you don't wanna put in all this stuff if you don't need it. Now, there's some that we talked about and talking with Clinton about fire hydrants over there, where, you know, we've got them up through the yard in some spots, but not across the whole north side, or you know, in the middle there. So do we need them or not? And if we do, that's a full water main. So when do we, you know, what's the funding for that? Does it come out of a SMIC fund, or does it come out of a water fund, or a fire, or where is it? I mean, it's not a lot of customers. It's more put in for a fire hydrant use for a fire. So those are things that we all have to look at and find out. Yes, if we can get grant funds, by all means, if we can get grant funds, let's say for fire hydrants and putting in some more water line, we wanna do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt us. It helps us to have them. It may not be our perfect plan, but if we can get them through the grant process, that helps.
Yeah, that's great. I'd like to ask if there's anyone on the phone that has any comments or questions.
No?
Nope. Okay, well, hearing none. Okay, so that, we kind of talked out SMIC. Can we shift now to like our existing infrastructure and things here in town? I know we never got a chance as a board to really follow up with you after the rate study, and I know that they looked at a lot of these things with the expansion and town growth, and so can we talk just a little bit, and we can get into the CIP, because I know there's several things in the CIP specific to water, wastewater.
So, on
Yeah.
one thing about this list that you have in there, this is a working document. We went through it. We are still gonna have a meeting with council on it, just to let you know that. And I'm gonna add one more thing to it today here,
Okay.
when we get going on it. So I just want to say that.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. So this is a working document, but did any of these things on here come out of that water wastewater study that were, you know, addressed or kind of found out through that process, or have these been things that we've already had on the list for a long time?
Not all of them have been on for a long time, but a lot of them have been put in, and it matters on funding available. And so some of these we've got in this year. We're looking to do the well abandonments of Fort Raymond, anything else to be able to work on it and do things. We're looking at those. You know, in the next few years, we've got several of those smaller sewer items. The water, we're looking at trying to do replacement roof on the gateway tank. We are close to a 50-50 grant. That's a $300,000 job to get the roof. And we're not tearing the whole roof off. It's more the top area to just redo it, recoat it and everything. Tank replacement up Lowell Canyon. We have a 400,000 gallon and a 200,000 gallon up Lowell Canyon for water tanks. The 400,000 we just refurbished a couple of years ago, and it's super successful, other than they had found lead and it cost us some extra that we had to do on that project. But the tank looks great, it's working great. The smaller tank, when they were inspected prior to this, they said that smaller tank is not, it's not worth refurbishing. That's something that's replaced. It's the one that it's holding, but it's not something that we're gonna be able to refurbish. So at that time, what we're looking at for future growth on that is to put a 400,000 or 500,000 gallon instead of the 200,000. When we tear the old one out, we want to put a bigger one in, which then gives us the extra capacity that keeps us into the future more for the water side of it. So that's a big one we're looking at, and right now we're hoping, you know, obviously grants for that. That'd be a quick, easy one. We already have plans in place. We have those being done across the peninsula and the state that we can, it's fairly simple to just say we want that same tank.
Right.
And so those are pretty nice to go in. It doesn't have to be redesigned. It's just designing the site right there to fit it right by the fence or to redo the fence. So those are things that, you know, we're working on going through. We have our wells, and I don't know at what point or if you guys want a briefing on really how our systems work or where we're at. I mean, I can give you a brief just overview that for water we have all of our wells. We've got 3 wells pumping to the treatment plant. We used to have treatment in each well house, and now we have it all goes to the treatment plant, goes through a contact chamber, which is another 500,000 gallon tank, and then it's gravity fed to all the rest of the town, to Lowell Canyon. The only one we pump to is up to Gateway. And so the Gateway tank is pumped from the treatment plant up there. Then we have gravity flow throughout the town. Power goes out, you still have water, at least for a while, and more than likely it'll stay on. We have generators to keep that stuff going. So the water system that has to run it's got to fill all the tanks, it's got to run all the town water, and it's got to run all the fire hydrants, everything ready to go. So those things are all charged and ready, and those are all things that wear out. A lot of our stuff is older. Some of it's back from the earthquake days. I don't think we've still got any of the wood stave pipe that's got the wire wrapped around it.
Yeah.
We've got some samples of that we kept over at the yard for years, but a problem we have, you know, is not just our infrastructure. We have a lot of restaurants that really they have grease traps. Sometimes they're not being checked or not being functional, or somebody just plain pours it. We had to dig a pipe up, and I believe it was over here in the alley behind 4th, and it's a 6-inch pipe, and you've only got about a 1-inch hole. It was all fat grease line, and it was blamed on the city that we had it until we dug it up and went, well, here's your pipe, you know, that is what happened to it. So we have all those things. We have lift stations. There's 4 different lift stations. So we have one over at Forest Acres. It pumps across. It comes over to the one in the harbor by Napa. Then there's a 3rd one that's over at kind of in the campground area right now by that bathroom that is on the corner of Blaine. And then everything pumps from there, or gravity flows from the rest of town on this side. All gravity flows over to lift station 3, which is on the corner over by the falls. And then that is all pumped in one pipe out to the Lowell Point Lagoon. For the water system, like I said, it's all gravity feed going out to all the other places. And it's just a matter, at some point, do we need another well or not? Right now we're in really good shape, and we have good water and good water supplies. We're fortunate more than a lot of communities. But that's part of our rate study and how to figure out. And right now, the bigger businesses that are using the most water, it's on a declining scale, so they pay less the more they use, kind of the Costco plan, right? They're still using a lot of water that we still have to produce. And to give you an idea, our water rate for 1,000 gallons of water on a meter, it's like six something per 1,000 gallons normal. And so as these bigger users get up over 500,000 gallons in a month, which they do, some of them, and mostly it's Icicle or the sewer big plant, but it gets up there, now they're paying down all the way down. It's a declining scale down to $1.96 per 1,000 gallons. It's something that you don't see very often across the country, and you see mostly a flat rate, which would make our billing department so much easier to go through. That's been a big part of this rate study, is if nothing else, getting to meters on, businesses, which would be threeplexes and up in town. And pay for what you use. So you got a minimum charge, then you pay from there, and eventually, we would look at residential after that, but trying to get to the single payer, or the single usage fee is a little harder. And we found that as we've been going through and what it really means on big businesses versus small businesses versus, you know, who's taking the big brunt of an increase. It affects the projects we're talking about. We still have to have a certain amount of revenue, and if that revenue declines, it's just how do you split that pie up between residential, small business, large business, and those users. So we're working on all those things as part of it, and all the projects we've been talking about are part of that.
Yeah.
You know, and we've gone through and tried to eliminate things that have just been on the list and not done for a long time, and try to specify them as we go out for the next 10 years. So it's certainly a balance to try to get there, and who pays, how do you make a fair payment? And, you know, it's really hard for the biggest users to pay the full $6 when they've been paying less than $2. And so what's the happy medium, or is there one, and how does that affect? So we're going through all that. That's all part of that rate study, and we'll get through the project, and as we get these things ironed out, we're gonna keep moving ahead with the projects that we are doing. Most of those are infrastructure related, and like I said, a good example is the water tank up Lowell Canyon. Certainly pushes us out into the future even more. It doubles that tank size, more than double, and I think we should probably be doing a 500,000 instead of a 400. And that drops off that 200,000 gallon, and plus it gives us a good tank that's reliable for the future.
I wanna come back to the tariff, but just really quickly, on the sewage lagoon, are we good capacity-wise there? Like, what capacity are we at, and how much growth do we have where we're at on that lagoon?
Well, we just had DEC down here, did a full audit, they did a full inspection, they had the inspector, the permit writer, and the enforcement officer. All three down, went through that whole lagoon and all the paperwork, everything that's there. Checked it all, and they were not unhappy with how we're operating with the other stuff. So we've gone through some things, they made some suggestions. We really had a good visit to go through everything. That permit comes up for renewal this next year, and the SMIC permit we just put in for renewal on that one. But as far as the capacity, it was designed for a 5,000 constant capacity. We're well under that right now. Where do we get? You know, it's been running good as far as the things we have. There are some hiccups that are there now and then, but mostly it's able to handle the capacity we have, and quite a bit. You know, at design for 5,000, and what's our population? It's running, I wanna say 226 or 20, so we're roughly half of it. So if we double Seward in size, or even get like we're looking like we're going to, then we're gonna have to start exploring more avenues of what to do. I mean, we're looking at those things. Is there different ways to do it? Do you put a headworks building in and try to remove solids before they get, you know, the majority of them, before they even go in the lagoon? Now that extends the life of the lagoon even further, but what are you gonna do with the solids you pull out? Over different places, Soldotna has a headworks building that they remove the solids. They have a belt press, and they are able to, through a process of drying it, going through a clarification system where they take more of it out, they actually haul it to their landfill in Soldotna to Central Peninsula. Which, at this point, they won't let us do it here, but it's just the difference in the landfills for that. So there's different processes across the state and the country of how, and we certainly look at them with our, not only DEC, but with the other communities that we have around, that we try to gain knowledge from them and what they're doing differently or not.
Alright, well, anything else from the board on water and wastewater?
No.
Okay, I'd like to give anyone that's here from the public that wants to weigh in. Anything you wanna say specifically on this subject?
Speak to us.
We on sewer, or is that what you want to weigh in on?
Yeah, specifically water and sewer right now, and then we'll dive into the CIP in general here in a second. We're trying to be done by 1, so we're after half an hour, so I'm trying to be cognizant of our time, but if anyone has comments or anything to close out.
Anything bad to Doug, he's done a good job.
Yeah, and so Doug, my final thing is, after this water wastewater study happened, and I know that you've gone through these suggestions for the change in the tariff, and you said that you're working through things, what is the next step? Like, where is the decision point going to happen on what is actually, like, where those changes are going to be, what it's gonna look like in a tariff moving forward?
It will be in new tariffs and hopefully by the end of June,
Okay.
but it's going through, that process right now, and we would like to wait for, Jeanette to get here, the new city manager, to really finalize everything on it, but council could pass it before then if they're happy with, a different change we're making. We're trying to bring everybody back into it and be sure where we're at. We've had different pushback from large user groups. I've got some meetings and a questionnaire going out with some of them. We may get then residents, if we put too much back to residents, then we may have them come in and it just kind of goes back and forth. But we're trying to find that happy medium, bring it in, and then at some point, pass the tariff so it's ready for our budget season coming up this year.
It'll be 2022.
Yeah, for 2022, so it would be approved in the budget and it would take effect in 2022, any
Well, that would be
changes?
the recommendation at this
Yeah.
point.
Okay,
So, and council could change that sooner or later.
great.
You know, that's part of when we bring it to council here the next month or so, where, like it or not, right? Do we wanna make some more changes to it, so.
Yeah.
Those are things we're all trying to work. We've met with council, had work sessions, and obviously, the last one, we got more bigger business weighing in, saying, whoa, wait a minute, let's go through some more. So we're dealing with some of those folks and trying to figure out just what's the best way. So once we bring that, we'll bring it back.
Yeah, Mary Terry.
Well, I just guess I wanna add, just kind of in a neutral way, if I was PACCAB, you guys have done a lot of things to bring more marine and encourage, development for fisheries. So, I think PACCAB would wanna think about how the changes might affect those fisheries, cause it does no good to get a crane and get those other things if then your fish producers are affected in such a way that they leave town. Or like, the Sea Life Center might be affected. So, we might say big business, but, and that's, PACCAB might have some recommendations, but it's definitely a balance, and I think those folks are in tune. Or as a tourism town, do we need a laundry? Do we need, what's going on? So just throwing that out there as some of the equation.
I think that's super valuable, and unfortunately, I'm sure our board is all cringing right now because we take a hiatus in a month and we don't really have the time to say, hey, we'll host a work session, let's get all the stakeholders together, let's be part of that process, because we're kind of running out of time on our spring season before we take our hiatus. But what I was going to say is I would maybe encourage a work session of some kind, or at least a stakeholder meeting, even if it wasn't with council, but a public meeting where you can get people together and have more of an open discussion where people are able to, now that we're able to meet in
Right.
person again.
There will be another one prior to it coming to council.
Okay,
So there will be another one, and I would encourage anybody from PACCAB or anywhere else, if you're interested, please come and weigh in. Yeah, and you don't have to wait to the meeting to weigh in. If you've got ideas that would make a change to any of those tariffs or those rates, put them out. It's sure nice to have them ahead of time and work through them, or even just sit down with someone to say, great idea, here's what we can do, or we had 2 others that looked at that and here's where it went. So I don't think you necessarily have to wait for the meeting. It would make you more prepared for the meeting. So feel free to, I ask folks if they wanna call, please do. I've tried to set up a couple of meetings lately with Icicle's one of them, and we'll get the meeting with them. We have Sea Life Center, Tara, and we're meeting with her and the finance director. We're doing these things to try to get now where we're at, and that'll culminate in a work session before it goes to council.
perfect.
But like I said, you don't have to bring something new to the work session, throw it out, let's get it through there if somebody's got it, so I would encourage the public to do that. So we aren't, you know, I don't wanna say it's a surprise, but it's a new item,
Yeah,
and everybody then changes direction or not or something, so. It's just something that certainly the process is out there for participation, and I encourage you to do so,
awesome. Well,
as a board or as public.
thank you, Doug. I would really appreciate your time here today. Thanks for your thoughtful answers to these questions, and we definitely look forward to, you know, helping to be a part of that process and helping to facilitate if we can be of use to you in the future too. Just know that we're here. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to shift our discussion to the capital improvement plan in general. And if either Stephen or Norm, if you could maybe explain, it looks like these are in year order for the things that do have a year, that they're actually,
So like,
well, that's not completely true. There's a few that are out of order.
Yeah, no, they're not in
no,
your
so
order.
like I said, this is a working document. This was something that we had at our meeting the other, last week with, department heads. And what, you know, and with the finance director, and, cause she had just was working with some in her other job, and she was like, some of the stuff on here is regular maintenance items, so that's why we put all our heads together, took off what was regular maintenance, and what, you know, and then one thing was taken off, we need to put it back on, and that's under general for facilities, the heat loop project, that needs to go back on. Anyways, like I said, yeah, there's no order of anything yet, that's gonna be a discussion when we have a council, what kind of order we're gonna, that'd be a work session for
24th of May.
24th of May, when the new city manager starts, at a work session on that evening. We're gonna ask council here on Monday to set up a meeting, a work session on that date. So, yeah, so like I said, nothing's in order, but we were going through things and moving things, so some.
I'd actually like to see it in a couple of different orders, like I'd like to see it with the criticals all at the top, and then I'd like to see it with the money in order. Just so that it's easier to compare, like, I don't know, that's just my feedback.
So one other thing to tie in with what Norm was just saying, just for clarification, some of these, we've had some prior work done where we've got design, we've got plans built. You know, one that we talked about extensively with staff when we were going through it, just as an illustrative example, is the new public safety building is in there at $5 million, but that really depends, I mean, on, are you talking about a police and fire combined building? Cause that's gonna be a $40 million facility. Does it have a jail? Does it not have a jail? I mean, so some of the dollar amounts really need to be revisited. Just because there's, you know, it's been such a long time. I mean, we were just lamenting, you know, a piece of equipment that Doug's gonna need that was $340,000 a year and a half ago, now it's $460,000. The other thing, like we talked about kind of beforehand, is the cost of building materials is going through the roof. So just even in the last 12 months, that's changed dramatically. So kind of as we proceed, you know, we need to figure out what are our priorities, and then we really don't want to have any more of this like we did with the animal shelter, where we spent, you know, over $100,000 on design on a building that wasn't feasible. So we don't want to put ourselves into a situation where we're making decisions about what we're going to do and putting, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars towards it and then not actually proceeding. So I guess that's just, like Norm said, this is very much a working document, and we're looking forward to meeting with council and obtaining a better sense of what council has interest in, and then also doing a public engagement. You know, it's nice that we're getting back to in-person, and we'd really like to be able to build like storyboards and be able to have the public come in, and even if it was just like come in and rate, but we want to get feedback from council, we want feedback from the business community. I've already met with Jason at the chamber and looking at what we can do to collaboratively reach out to businesses, get the public's input on this stuff, and then based off of that, after we get a sense of what, you know, maybe it's what are our priorities, you know, what are our top 10 priorities? And a lot of it's, you know, I think we tend to gravitate towards the big exciting stuff, But one of the biggest needs that we have is expanding utilities in our community. You know, we talk about it all the time that we have a huge lack of residential housing. Well, what can we do to partner with developers? And it's not big and flashy and you don't see it, but what are we gonna do to bring in utilities to expand housing in our community? So I think we just as a community kind of need to assess where we want to go in the next decade and then kind of go from there. A couple of people have asked, you know, as far as administration, what do you guys think are the big items on this list? It's tough to do. It's all important. Obviously, the animal shelter is something that we frankly would like to see get going. We've got a lot of momentum on it. We think we can do it for less than $1 million, and it's been a long-term need. That's on the list. The other one I would call out on the electric side, our transmission lines at $12 million, and then the, transmission line.
And all the hardware.
And then all the, transformers. $20 million project. When we met with, Senator Peter Machicki recently and Representative Carpenter, they asked us kind of a similar point, and that was our, you know, if we were to get grant money at the state level, or, you know, through this federal package, that's gonna be up there because our, you know, our transmission lines, need to be upgraded from 69 to 115 kV. And then, you know, the other thing is it's, you know, we're looking up with a new cruise ship dock, can we bring in power for the cruise ships there? Our electric infrastructure, you know, some of it's 40 years old with a 30-year shelf life. So those are definitely the items that we need to look at, and they're big ticket items, but, yeah.
So I have a question, really quick. So I'm used to seeing the CIP as like per fund, but I think it's actually kind of great to put everything together, but I'm wondering from a practical standpoint of actually expending funds, is that's still on a per fund basis, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. In its Excel version that we can send out to you guys, there's a tab for general fund, there's a tab for each of the enterprise funds, et cetera.
This was just a printout that we went through line by line item when we were doing it, and then
Gotcha.
the adjustments were made, and then, you know, Jen gave us this back, and this is what I had for you guys to work
Yeah.
with today.
Madam Chairperson?
Yeah.
I don't wanna be a Budinsky here, but I will be. I would recommend, along with what staff has done, that you go to the budget and look at the actual approved CIP plan, because it is broken down by fund.
Right, and that's
I
that's
found
what
that
we
to
have
be,
seen.
For my purposes, easier to go through this one Caluge document. But this is currently the one that's in play. This is what's been adopted by the council. I guess it's the official CIP until amended by the council. And they alone are the ones who do the amending. It's the plan that the city fathers adopt. So I just, it's online, you can go into the budget and print it out or whatever you want to do. I've got it right here. I find it to be in a format. Now, I understand what the administration's doing. They're redacting things that are probably maintenance, and I agree with that totally. You don't want to be kludging up your plan with things that can be done on an operational basis annually or whatever. But just in answer to Linda's question, this is broken down by fund. It's pretty easy to read. It doesn't have the comments in it, doesn't have the valuable things that they provided in your other documents. So put the two together if you want to have any questions. That's just my suggestion.
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Linda, do you have
I just wanted to clarify, it's a lot of small print, so I don't know if I've missed it or not, but the actual expansion of, or creating the second cell in the SMIC Lagoon is not currently on here as a CIP. Okay, and there's also nothing on here about anything in terms of expansion or supplementing the one on Low Point either, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Well, I really appreciate you guys. You know, it is nice to see the process. I actually appreciate seeing the working document. It is a little bit hard to read because because the funds aren't together, it's just a little confusing. But then I saw that, you know, things are by year and what's completed, and I can see that like there are things that are in progress. Just from a like a budgeting, an overall process standpoint, when we're talking about where these funds come from, right? So the general maintenance comes out of your budget that you have year to year. Where are the funds for these capital improvement projects coming from? Like, I mean, I feel like that's a question that we all have, right? How do we get the money to do these big things that we need to do? And how are we setting that aside to make sure that money is being used for those things? What does that look like in the budgeting process?
So I can touch on like the harbor, we have the CRR fee, capital repair replacement fee. You know, every transaction is like, you know, that goes towards the replacement of docks in the future. You know, docks are expensive, but that's one way there, and you know, there's just adding fees, but, you know, most like the harbor stuff is grant money. We have to come up with a little bit, so we have a fund balance that we can, you know, if we have enough, we have to cover a certain amount by law. Then above that, we could possibly use that to fund some of these projects. But we gotta make sure that we have what we're supposed to have in case of emergency, something happens. So some of that money can be used that, like I say, there's a lot of grant money, lots of, you know, going out there applying for grants, and things like that. For the general fund, it's mostly, it's building up, or like they bonded to go get the paved road, so something like that can be done also.
So it's kind of a see what we need and then figure out how to get the money as we go type process. Okay. Yeah, I guess I was just taking this back to a to a principle in business called profit first, right? Where you like take your profits and you take them, you set them aside, and like put them in a savings account first, and then you only spend what you have left over, so that you always end up like with those things that you need for the long term.
It's like the enterprise funds, you know, part of
Yeah.
their, you know, like the doing a water wastewater study, the electric's doing the electric study. They're putting in the rate increases to cover the future costs of most of these projects.
Right.
So, but the general fund does not, you know, so that's how we have to work really much harder with the general fund in finding grants and things like that.
Right.
I do have one question. On the second and third page of this compiled document of expenses, on the new and replace column, there are a few things that have no rating whatsoever of that level. Is that because they're considered to be sort of ongoing maintenance items, or is there just you didn't get a chance to rank them? So.
I can answer the end ones, just came in late, we had to put them in there correctly, and so as we put them in, we just didn't get the designation, whether it was replace or new, and most of those are replacement. But there's just some that, like Norm said, is a working document.
Yeah.
We're all trying to put it together, this is not a finished copy. And ideally, all those columns be filled in, Stephen, and those guys have been going through all that to get it all checked off, so.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification on it. Thank you, Doug.
I could clarify, because
Well, and I mean, there's some things like, you know, the sludge removal, that isn't replace or new. That's not, doesn't fall into that category at all. It's just go, make it go away.
Right, and I guess it would be, the R means recurring on that one. maybe.
Yeah.
Right,
You know,
right.
Remove.
Yeah, remove, there you go.
It means what you want it to mean, just like infer what they meant. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. Anyone on the phone that has any comments or anything you want to add on the capital improvement plan, water, wastewater, anything we've talked about today?
No comments for me.
All right, thank you, Board Member Smith.
No, none for me.
No, nothing from Lee Missy either? Okay, thanks, Erin. How about from the members of the public that are here? I'll turn it over to you again. Anything? Yes, please.
I just want to do a quick introduction. I'm Brian O'Leary, so I'm the manager down at high school, or with OBIC Foods. So I just trying to get conversant on all this stuff going on here. Every city's got its own ins and outs and its own process. So I look forward to working with Doug and everyone here, and obviously Norm and Steve, we've done a little bit, but I think there's some more catching up to do here in the future. So appreciate being here and look forward to engaging.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. Daryl, it's always great to have you here.
First time I've been back in this room in a year, I guess. I appreciate all of you. I do follow your meetings as I can on YouTube. And I've been trying to keep up with you a little bit. I can't keep up with those two guys sitting They're way ahead of me, but they should be. But I appreciate all that you do in your service. It's good to be back here. I hope you've all gotten vaccinated. I'm a little distressed when I see our borough is almost last place in the state for percentage of vaccination.
It's
I
the
have
left
theories
side.
on that, but I won't pound them here. But if you have folks that you can convince to get vaccinated, please do. It's the only way we're gonna auger our way out of this thing, I think. And even that's not a guarantee, but, anyway, that's all I've got to say. I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
And thank you. If I may say, we have two former chairs of PACAB in the room today. When I first joined, Daryl was our fearless leader, and then when he made the choice to leave, our current fearless mayor was our chair. And so I'm still up here swimming in the large shoes that they left. But I appreciate so much you both still being so involved and coming to our meetings and paying attention and being part of the process, because we miss you greatly. Any comments from administration or from Doug? Again, really appreciate you being here and taking the time out
I was
to
gonna say,
share with us.
yeah, I was say, good to see Daryl. I talked to a few times on the phone through the year, you know?
Once in a while,
He'll call me with questions and stuff, we get her done.
same thing with Doug, once in a while. I try not to bug him too
Yeah.
much, 'cause I know what it's
So
like.
it's good to see people out and about, and it's nice to have an in-person meeting with some of the public, so.
Yeah, it feels really good. I am officially, as of today, 2 weeks out from being vaccinated, so that's when you're supposed to be officially good. I'm no longer a threat to others, as they say. Carl, do you have anything?
Yeah, well, I have a question for administration. I realize we're working under the direction of the council. Is there, and I guess I think from my point of view only, I'd really like to see the mask go away, and if you've been vaccinated, either the vaccines work or they don't, you know, and it's so much easier to understand people when they're talking, telling us critical information, you know, that I think the council and administration maybe need to consider revisit that thing. Now, I can understand general public, you know, but a lot of us sitting here already have been vaccinated, and that's my comment.
Linda, do you have anything?
No, thank you to everybody that came, and thank you, Doug, for all your great answers. And I look forward to seeing this CIP come to council, you know.
Yeah, just remember, yeah, it's gonna go to council as a work session, so,
Yeah.
you know, you can come, you can call to the work session, you can come to the work session. If you have something you've thought about later, bring it back, or let Stephen and I know, we can add it to it, or, you know, make sure we have, you know, everything that you guys requested.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I may just respond to, you know, to Carl, from the beginning, I feel that mask wearing is as much about setting an example as it is about who's in the room right now. So I feel that I strongly support whatever council decides, and as long as the emergency order is in place, and as long as the CDC recommendation is still that when you gather in groups of a certain size that you wear masks, I would support that. But if it becomes optional, you know, go with whatever the city decides. But I just know that I care so much about this community, and I care about everyone here, and I want to make sure that we don't loosen things up to a point that makes anyone unsafe. So we'll just look for that guidance to come out as things continue.
Chair, I'm a kind of NPR junkie. I listen to a lot of radio, more than I watch TV, and of course NPR, take it or leave it. But one of the things that was on the news today was apparently some nursing homes are experiencing reinfections of vaccinated people. Now, they're saying that the infections are less severe and they haven't had hospitalized anybody. But it is possible to get reinfected. And it just depends, of course, if you're a certain deep dish, your likelihood of getting reinfected is higher. But we don't know the total efficacy of this vaccination, these vaccines, but I have a lot of hope, have to.
Yeah.
age, to have a little bit more, so that's why I prefer to wait.
Yeah. The Pfizer vaccine, they're saying, is not effective against some of these new variants, like the South African variant and some of the other ones, which again, you know, that's why I think, personally, we may be wearing masks for quite a while, even if we're vaccinated, simply because this is a tourist town and people are coming. And like, I had a conversation with a woman today and she was like, do I have to have a negative test? And I said, you know, no, you don't have to, but our concern is that you not show up and infect our staff, so we have to close down. And she was like, oh, huh. So, I mean, it's still a problem, I think. It's still a problem.
But if I may close on a conciliatory note, I feel that we all agree that I miss seeing your faces.
Yes.
And I miss being with people, and I'm so glad to be back in a room with you. And I hope that as soon as it's safe that we're able to get back to normal.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you all being here and for your input today. And unless I see any last minute, I am going to call us adjourned.
At 11:58.